This is the Misdirected Mark Podcast, a podcast about gaming, game mastering, and entertaining you, our listeners. We are explicit, you have been warned, and I'd like to thank Mike Willard for letting us use his music on our show. Now let's pick up those mics and get on with this thing.
All right, time to do it.
Hey.
Alrighty. Makjus. You are driving the stolen guard hover car out of the hangar as the Man of War explodes, like full-on Michael Bay explosion behind you.
Not the Michael Bay explosion.
All right, I shake my head. But I push the hover car to its limits. Makjus is there trying to use the confusion of our exploding starship to cover our escape so we can get in the traffic.
All right, Parsonval sits in the passenger seat, gripping the MacGuffin orb while staring over his shoulder at Captain Tallis.
So you see her, she's standing like among the cast, like she isn't moving, like everybody else is moving around her, and she's just like staring at your car moving away, like with tears running down her cheeks.
Ouch. Sorry, Parson. You gonna be okay?
Yeah, it had to be done. We can't let the Empress get her hands on the MacGuffin orb.
I know. You'll have a lot of explaining to do next time you meet. But I'm gonna miss that ship. Did we have to blow it up?
Yeah, that was unexpected. Bob, I was sure you were going to give her the orb and fix your lover's quarrel, or at least like shoot your way out of there. I was not expecting the ship to go up.
Blowing up the ship was the easier escape. And maybe she'll see that I wasn't just abandoning her out of spite. We couldn't give up the orb, but I wasn't going to make her go back on her oath. That would break her. So I gave up something else I loved instead.
Aww.
All right, well, all right, you guys make it into traffic. You can't see anybody following you. Where are you heading to?
Well, I've got those contacts in the grind. Remember, Narson owes us a favor. We'll go there.
You sure that's a good idea? I'm pretty sure they're going to think that you owe them a favor.
I'm not sure Parson gets to lecture Makjus on bad relationship decisions.
Oh.
Okay, good point.
As you head down towards the grind, you cross an overpass, allowing you to see a view of the city stretching out before you. And the smoking ruin of the hangar behind you, where the remnants of your starship is still burning.
Makjus looks at the hangar, then at Parsonval and the MacGuffin orb. I guess we all have to live with the choices we make.
This will be fun. How much more trouble can we get into?
And with that, welcome to the 410th episode of the Misdirected Mark Podcast. Tonight, we conclude our three-part series on non-optimal play. On this episode, we're going to focus on being the player with making non-optimal decisions, how to use them, how to balance them, and how to support others' non-optimal choices in the game. Then we'll join the chat room for life to get your input on this sort of game before dropping into the after show. But first, my name is Jerry.
My name is Phil.
And I am Old Man Logan.
Woohoo! All right.
All right. Time for another one. But before we can enter the house misdirected, temperature check. Got to make sure everybody's cool. Jerry, how you feeling?
I'm good. Coughing notwithstanding, I'm good. I'm a little raspy, but good.
Coughing from all the talking from teaching the class?
That's pretty much it. That and the weather, yep.
Yeah, I get like that if I have to speak for too long.
9
My
hours.
throat gets dry and all that. All right, good. Phil, how you feeling?
Me? I've been like super sleepy. I was super sleepy today. I had a little bit of a headache in the morning, but that's all past. I feel good. Went out for a bike ride, and got my coffee, so I'm ready to rock and roll. And emotionally, hanging in there, right? Like still doing the virtual school, virtual work, pandemic, all that stuff. Doing what I can to just kind of make it day to day.
Okay.
Cool. How about you, Bob?
Awesome. Physically, I feel pretty good. My neck's a little cranky, but that's the way it's been for a while here. But overall, it's not overbearing. Emotionally, pretty good. No overwhelming existential dread yet this week. Yet. We'll see how the rest of the week goes.
It's early in the week.
Yeah, it's still early in the week.
Week ain't over yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, feeling all right. So, yay.
I feel like existential dread is it's this thing that like lurks around the corner. You're just like, oh, I'm gonna let my guard down. It's like this world is on fire, and you're like, fuck.
Wasn't Existential Dread like the 4th studio album from Vent Magnetic?
You know you're Vent Magnetic, my man.
Hey, what can I say?
You definitely do. Nice job. Existential Dread. Love that album. All right. Well, we're in the lobby, and that means it's time to do the one thing. So, Jerry, what's your one thing?
Well, I watched Dr. Sleep this week, which was the movie with Ewan McGregor that's the sequel to The Shining, both the book and the movie. It borrows heavily from Kubrick's The Shining, but it's also got a little bit of the book in it. It's based on a book that Stephen King wrote. And HBO has the director's cut on it, which is really nice. It's 3 hours long, and it's really good. It moved along. It did not feel like 3 hours. It's part like crazy psychic adventure movie, part weird Stephen King horror, some really good actors, some great ideas. Be a great game setting the way they deal with it, especially the villains. Some really bad villains, which is really good. Just a lot of fun. And Ewan McGregor getting the hell out of it as he always does. So, which is always a good thing. But it's a lot of fun. If you like Stephen King movies, or you like dark adventure movies, or you like The Shining, either way, it's good. They recast the characters from the movie The Shining. Got some character actors who look close enough like Nicholson and what's her name who played Wendy.
No.
She was also Olive Oil.
Yeah, all I can think of is Olive Oil, and that's not her name.
But same, but they did a really good job because it's done in like 4 acts. The first act is all a flashback to what happened after he left the Overlook Hotel as a child and him growing up, and then several little chapters before everything comes to a head. It's really well done. It was not a chaotically done movie, so things plodded along at an even pace and moved forward and moved in a mostly linear plot line. So you weren't trying to follow 16 different things at once jumping around, and it worked really well. I say that because another movie I watched this week had that problem where it jumped around too much. But anyway, Dr. Sleep, if you like that kind of thing, it's enjoyable. It's not overly gory. It's not overly scary, but it is a little creepy and it's dark. Anyway, Bob, what'd you do?
Basically watching 4 different versions reminded me how much I love Star Trek. In the past 7 days, I have watched an episode of Lower Decks, multiple episodes of DS9, an episode of Next Generation, and an episode of the original series. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, man, I love Trek.
Yeah.
Right?
There's the things about each one of those that I really, really enjoy. And it's just like, it's just good stuff. DS9 is definitely, to me, still the pinnacle. Mm-hmm. But yeah, Trek, man, I can't wait for the season 3 of Discovery. And
this week was our this week for the DS9 watch party. I had put on the list of episodes a season 7 TNG episode, which was a Maquis episode that fell in line with the DS9 Maquis episode. So that's why you were watching TNG. And then in preparation for tonight's watch party, I put the old series season 2 episode Mirror, Mirror, which is, the quintessential evil universe episode, Spock with a beard.
And I loved so much about that, watching that.
Yeah.
So much.
I hadn't seen that particular episode in quite a while, and I was just like, oh man, there's so much, like little pieces where, Shatner gets to chew the scenery. And
part of what I loved about it was after watching so many episodes of Picard and Sisko, and, Sisko's still my favorite captain. Picard is number 2. But Kirk, just the fact that, Kirk just makes shit up as he goes. Like, nothing phases him. Like, he ends up in this completely bizarre situation, and in like 30 seconds, he's got a plan. He's rolling along with it. He's just making shit up as he goes along. I'm like, it's a great
Shatner. Shatner loves. I'm sure loved doing all of those. But there are a few kind of squicky things about that episode because
there's some things that show its age.
The way they handle women in relationships and stuff sometimes can be like very like But I will say, just from like my own perspective, the actress that they got for the love interest in the Mirror Universe,
the
stunning woman, gorgeous.
Yes, she was very attractive. I thought what was interesting is you made me think of it when you were talking about Kirk kind of just rolling with it. There's a reference in Voyager where Janeway's talking, I think, to Harry Kim about I think it was Harry Kim was talking to him about the old days of the Federation and Starfleet and stuff like that, and talking about how like it wasn't as organized as it is now. Like those guys like Kirk and Sulu and stuff like that were just like, kind of following orders, ignoring orders when they felt like it. Like
it was kind of like quote unquote the Wild West.
Yeah.
Well, wagon train in space, right?
Yep.
Yeah. It was good. It was a nice reference that, Janeway was like, oh yeah, like those captains were all mavericks. Like there was no room for like a Picard, older Picard, a young Johnny Picard.
Yeah.
Would have done
Picard
just
would have fit in great there.
Yeah. But yeah, it was interesting. It was fun watching all three.
Yes.
In that I now understand like season 7 is all story fulfillment. So like season 7 is very much season 7 TNG is very much story fulfillment. So like that episode's all about closing up the Ensign Rose storyline.
Yeah.
And then the old series is just like it's out there, right? Like it's really
bizarre sci-fi stories in there, and
well, and that was the cool part, right? Like, I mean, they had no boundaries. There was barely there was no sci-fi like that on TV. They were out there hanging it out. But I think what's interesting is it's fun to see what their idea of the future looks like.
Yeah.
Right? Because just like when Kirk talks to the computer, it's so brutal.
Yeah.
Like, computing, boop, 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 boop. It's just
boop, beep, boop. Yeah.
I also love the way that the original series crew, like, we're in a parallel universe. And it was like, yep, of course we are.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, what's really interesting is, like, they take it in stride, where I actually would expect, like, a Voyager crew to be like, yeah, we covered this in Starfleet. Like, we covered this at the Academy. Like, this is...
Yeah.
Right,
like what happens when you get shunted? Yeah, like what happens when you get shunted to an alternate universe? Like, don't
what's the protocol?
Yeah.
Does the Prime Directive still count if we're not in our own universe?
Correct.
Stuff like that. Yeah.
That's
How
a
does
good
the
question,
temporal
actually.
time? Yeah.
All right, Phil. What's your one thing?
My one thing will be bike riding this week. I've just been riding like pretty much nonstop. But I did bump up my distance again, like by another like 0.4 miles. So I'm like doing like 2.7 miles a ride now. And it's really good, although it's getting colder. So I've also started slowly accumulating cold weather gear. So I learned a few things. Like, the really cool thing in the summer about my bike helmet is the really not good thing in the cold weather about my bike helmet, which is that air goes right into your helmet.
Yep.
So I got some skull caps so that I can just put that on and then put my helmet on to keep my head warm. And I really wanted to get like a nice like a biking jacket, but Biker 2XL, which is still too small for me, is way too small. Bikers, like bicyclists, have a very different opinion of sizing. So I was unable to get like a cool bicycle ride jacket, but I did get, after searching for quite some time, I found a nice Columbia fall jacket, like something that's not, I wanted something that wasn't fully waterproof because waterproof things don't breathe. But I needed something with like that could, that would be wind breaking because I don't want to freeze. Like I have cotton sweatshirts, but the air will go right through those once you start riding.
Yep.
So I found this nice Columbia jacket on sale. And like an adult, I did all the measurements they said.
Yeah.
So I like measured my chest and everything else and got the coat today, and it fits perfectly. Like I'm so pleased with it. Like it's really nice and I can zip it all the way up and it's not tight anywhere. And so like I was pleased about that. But yeah, anyway, so I'm riding more. This week I think is the last warm week. I have to next invest in some windbreaker pants because I think next week the high is going to be like 58, and I got a feeling like that's going to start to be just a little too cold for.
Yeah, denim tends to be like, "Hi, cold air, come right on through."
Yeah, I'm not going to ride in denim. I'm just going to get some I'm going to get some like workout pants or something.
Like parachute pants, right?
Did you catch Andy's comment?
No.
She thought you said Viking jacket, not biking jacket.
A Viking jacket would be awesome. I'm not sure how Vikings did jackets, but
well, I was going to say leather and faux fur for Phil.
Sure. I mean, this Columbia is definitely not
on
that.
The helmet.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Riding some more. Almost every day when I ride that bike, somebody compliments me on this bike. Like I'll roll by and somebody will just be like, "Those tires are rad, man!" Like, and they're fun because I'm now just starting to ride it off road a little. Like I'm cutting corners and just like riding over grass and stuff to get on like the bike trail and stuff. And man, you don't feel like I don't feel a thing with those tires. Like from on road, off road, back on road, nothing. They're their own suspension system. They're great. Anyway,
cool.
Move on to announcements. I'll do the DS9 one real quick, and then I'm going to kick it to Jerry for 2 more announcements. Okay. DS9 Watch Party is still going on. We are entering season 3. This week marks us entering season 3. If you have not joined yet, this is still a good time to join. Season 3 is where actually DS9 switches hands.
Yep.
The showrunner changes as a number of the DS9 writing team and Michael Pyler, who was the original showrunner, leave for Voyager. The new showrunner, what's his name?
Ira Steven
Bear, who I love. He comes on as showrunner, brings on a bunch of the TNG writers who just came off of the conclusion of Next Gen. So those writers are like super primed. And I think you will see this week, you will start to see a noticeable difference in the intensity of the show. And I say that saying that season 2 was not bad at all.
No, it was a good season.
Season 2 was great. The Wire, which we watched last week, is in season 2, and that's an excellent episode. But I can say season 3's excellent, and then we're going to spend a few weeks going through season 3, and then we hit season 4. And I no spoilers.
Nope.
Yeah.
But we're going to hit season 4, and woof, like.
Yep.
Season 3 is really where the show hits its stride, but season 4 is where it really, for me, was like, yeah.
See, like, I feel like season 4 is when they drop it into gear. Like, they finally hit 5th gear on it and just take off. Yeah. And then it's 4, 5, 6, and 7 are just flat out, like, amazing. Anyway, you can still join us if you want.
Yes.
You can go to our forums, so you do not have to be a patron to participate. Just go to our forums, scroll all the way down to the other stuff part. You will see the DS9 Watch Club at the top of the list. There is the weekly episode watch lists. So again, if you've watched and you're like, oh, hey, I think I'd like to just jump in now. Now is an awesome time to jump in. Like this week is a great week to jump in. A month from now, when we hit season 4, would also be a good time to jump in. But I will say right now, if you wanted to get in, this is a really good time. This is where the show really starts to kind of pick up.
Yep.
and you won't be behind. Like you won't have missed a whole bunch of stuff if you jump in now. Okay, that's me. Jerry, you want to welcome our newest patron and member to the Slack community?
Yep. Today we had a new patron join the Slack room for life, and that was Carl Halperin. They joined today, and welcome, Carl.
Welcome, Carl.
Hope you're enjoying time on the Slack room and enjoying all the forums and chats. And we're getting close to starting a new Minecraft game if that's something you're interested in. So feel free to jump in.
Oh man, I gotta figure out what to do with my current one, my solo instance.
Yeah,
I think I'm going to recommend that we put in 2 high-end, like 2 end game mod packs. I think part of the problem is we're getting so good at early and mid game that we're kind of burning through all the accessible, like not accessible, but the pretty, like we're all good at Ender IO and all of that stuff. But I'm looking at like Draconic, Project E, things like that require like a bit more oomph. They're really like, you don't start them till mid game. Yeah. I think I would like to see that.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Get some bonker stuff. That's the one where the reactor can actually blow up like half the world.
Yay.
The chaos reactor is, well, it's just that. Anyway, we'll talk about that later. Jer, there's some big Hasbro news.
Yep. Today, Hasbro announced that they are releasing HeroQuest. Yes, that HeroQuest. If you are a fan of the old 80s board game that was basically a Warhammer, GW Warhammer dungeon crawling pseudo/RPG kind of thing. It's the precursor to things like Descent and the Fantasy Flight games and Gloomhaven and all that. This was the granddaddy of them all. It was a great game, and it's been in limbo for a while because of multiple ownership rights and things like that. And Hasbro is now releasing it. I put a link in the chat room. There'll also be a link on the show notes that they're doing the release. It's $99 for the big box for the initial one, and for $150 you get the big box and the original 2 expansion packs upgraded for the new game, Keller's Keep and Lair of the Witch King, and or Curse of the Witch King. But it's just good old-fashioned fun. You can play it with anywhere from 1 to 5 players. We've done it with more than that, actually. But they've already gotten to the point where they're doing alternate genders for all of the main characters. You can play, you're not stuck playing just big, beefy male barbarian and so on. You can play as various genders for each of the characters. So they're making it very diverse, which is excellent, in both the heroes and the monsters. So anyway, it's at HasbroPulse.com, or just look up HeroQuest Game Hasbro, and I'm sure you'll find a link. But it looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. So when we can finally play again in person, it's going to be another one of the games we'll do as some of our weekly board game nights. So
I'm down for playing some HeroQuest.
I don't know if we ever actually played it, but I'm fairly confident that there is either a copy of the original game in my attic or in my garage, or maybe miraculously it sold at the garage sale, but I don't think it ever made it out to the garage sale.
I had several copies of it when back in the day, and when I got to college, I got more, or just after college, and we played. Several of my friends who were not quite ready to pull the trigger on being a GM back when we didn't have these wonderful indie games to play, like Love and Justice, that would teach people how to be a GM real quick. A lot of them took their turn running HeroQuest, and we played the entire campaign from the box game, both campaigns from the expansion games, and cherry-picked some other missions from the Elf Quest pack, the Barbarian Quest pack, and the Ogre Quest pack.
Cool.
At that time. So you played a lot. I mean, you could sit down with a bunch of friends and play 3 or 4 games in like 4 hours. So it was a lot of fun to kind of advance and play. Yeah. So cool. I'm looking forward. I hope it's compatible with the original game, because the original game was pretty sweet. Had a few little problems, but they'll fix that. So, and off topic, I just want to say, tonight I picked up Wegmans now has their own version of Vitamin Water Zero, and I have the orange flavor here. And good God, it is better than the actual original stuff. This thing is going to make really strong orange flavor. Cool. Tastes really good. I like it a lot. So anyway.
All right.
Great topic.
Phil, are you ready?
Oh, I will be in the second. Okay. Here we go.
Let
yes.
me do the thing.
Non-optimal play. We're back at it again. This time, looking at it from the player side. What's the player topic doing in the workshop? I don't know. But we're going to do it anyway. It doesn't make sense, but it's the workshop.
Don't suck. And don't play the wrong file because VLC Media Player screwed me. Yeah, don't suck.
Did we play the wrong audio?
I clicked on start and it started the intro instead of the highlighted file, which is workshop. Learn my lesson. Double click the one you want to play, and
that's just awkward.
We're professionals.
I feel weird now.
I stopped it and played the. It's
okay.
It's a disaster. It's a disaster.
Sorry, Rob.
We're sorry, Rob.
We're sorry, Rob. We screwed up.
I suck.
We're all bad. Anyway,
workshop. Yeah,
we're back to complete the trifecta on non-optimal play. 2 weeks ago, we looked at the mechanics. Last week, we talked about it from the GM perspective. And tonight, we're going to look at the role of players in non-optimal play.
Yeah. I kind of feel like it's a little redundant since we've been on this for 3 weeks now. But just in case, a little definition and stuff. Let's see if I can screw up 2 bumpers in a row.
Behold! You are in the presence of Definition Panda.
Epic bumper is epic.
All right, one more time for old time's sake. Non-optimal play is when a character makes an in-game decision that reduces or prevents control of a situation or outcome. For instance,
the character could spend all night studying for a big exam in order to gain a bonus on the exam. But instead, they indulge their party animal aspect and parties all night, and now goes to the exam with the aspect hungover.
There we go. That's definitely some non-optimal thinking there. We've talked about over the past 2 weeks why we do it, right? We've over the past 2 weeks, we've talked about a number of different reasons that people find this enjoyable. I know I find it enjoyable. I know that you guys do as well.
Oh, very much so.
The common factor is that it makes the game, and again, we use this very subjectively, more entertaining for the player who's doing it, and hopefully for the rest of the table, which is exactly what we're going to talk about tonight. We talked about a couple of weeks ago about mechanics that support non-optimal play, right? Remember that games can support it or they can just be neutral to it. And then last week, we talked about the role of the GM and how the GM actually influences non-optimal play in the game based on how they narrate the world, how they engage the mechanics, and how they interpret mechanical results. That all factors into whether a game in general, a game overall, will support non-optimal play. And as we talked about, GMs can ultimately, they can support, be neutral, or punish. Now, that's in contrast to rules, right? We did not find any rules in our research that punished non-optimal play, but GMs can absolutely punish players for non-optimal play. We're not saying they should, as we said in last week's episode, it's a dick move.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that GMs aren't doing that.
Right.
Excellent. So now let's turn to the players and examine their role in non-optimal. I'm not misdirected, Mark. Word scramble. It's going to be one of those shows, kids. Hang on, buckle up. Jerry, just what do the players have to do with this?
Well, the role of the player in non-optimal play is just about everything. I mean, we came about this in a weird way, but non-optimal play starts with the player.
Right. In retrospect, we actually should have done this episode first, right? But we came at it because we were talking about mechanics one day. Anyway, so we should have just done this.
We like to think outside the box. You know, it's time for a paradigm shift.
But here we are. If you ever go back and listen to these again, put them in reverse order. Do this episode, the GM one, and the mechanics.
Yeah.
Anyway, go ahead, Joe.
All right. Well, exactly. The player is the one who makes the non-optimal choice in your game. In other words, non-optimal play starts with them. And the player does this through one path, the agency of the action of the player. As we discussed before, the player with only a few narrative mechanical constraints has agency to make lots of decisions for their character.
Yeah, right. So by way of recap, what we said before is like you can't say that your character flies away from a situation if you don't have the mechanics for flight on your character sheet, or there's any narrative justification for you to fly, right? Like you can't just be like, I'm going to fly away from this, right? Mm-hmm. That's like the limit you have as a player. Beyond that limit, it's pretty wide open.
Yeah. Within those constraints, though, you have near infinite array of choices that you can make.
Right. And just because I don't want the Twitter people harping all over us, but it's not near infinite, right? It's likely quite finite, like what actions you could take. But it's right when it's finite. Though it's probably a really large number, right? So it's easy to say near infinite, but it's probably pretty finite. Yeah. But if you factor in things like the narrative situation, mechanics available, all of those things, there's probably a number of paths, not an infinite number of paths anyway.
That's okay. But the point is that a large array of choices a player alone, they get to make those decisions for their character. The GM doesn't really get to make that decision, and nor do the other players.
Right. And this is going to be really important as we start to talk about how to support this kind of play.
So when a character reaches a decision point in the game, they're determining if the action is going to be optimal or non-optimal. So declaring the action of their character, they're going to bring that choice they make into play.
Right. So once they declare their action, the response of the GM and the function of any supporting mechanics, if there are any, are then going to help kind of determine the outcome of that non-optimal decision.
Right. So this means that I just locked myself. So this means that not non-optimal options are successful. Sorry, I skipped one. So when the player reaches a decision point in the game, they're determining if the action is going to be optimal or non-optimal. They're declaring the action of their character. They're going to bring that choice they make into play.
Yeah. Right. So, I think we just talked about this, right?
Yeah.
I
jumped over it. I coughed and lost my place. But that means that not all non-optimal actions are successful. For example, we have randomizers, dice, cards, whatever. And when you do something, they might not bring about the desired result that you want.
Right. So your character could decide to seduce the king in hopes to enrage the queen, that being the non-optimal action, but then tanks the roll, makes a fool of themselves in front of the king and never actually gets him to bed.
Right. And the GM may not actually engage the action in a way the player thought they would.
Right. So the character does actually seduce the king in hopes of enraging the queen, only to find out that the queen has an arrangement with the king that they can share beds with whoever they choose.
So, while the player is in control of initiating the non-optimal play, the outcome is never going to be exactly certain.
So, the ability to engage in non-optimal play sounds like a big responsibility. And if I've learned anything from reading Spider-Man all these years, with great power comes great responsibility. So, what kind of responsibility does a player have when it comes to non-optimal play?
Right. So, perfect analogy because it's completely true. But also to quote one of my favorite movies, Roger Rabbit.
You mean you could have taken your hand out of that cuff at any time?
Nope. Only when it was funny. Right. And what I mean by that is that just because we as players can make non-optimal decisions at any point does not necessarily mean we should make them at every point.
Now, there are some of those exceptions, such as paranoia, fiasco, teenage runner space, tune, things like that.
Yeah. There are certain games where that kind of level of bad decision upon bad decision totally works for the game, right? Mm-hmm. So if we agree that those are exceptions, then as players, we need to factor in a few things when we decide on making a non-optimal choice in the game.
The first is going to be our personal motivations. As we said 2 episodes ago, there's a number of reasons why you might want to make one of those decisions. We should understand, why do we want to do this?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is important because if you don't, like, if you're knee-jerk reacting to a situation by making a non-optimal decision and you're not thinking to yourself, like, this will escalate things in the way I want. This will create a piece of drama that I'm really looking for. This will instigate the fight that I've been trying to get. Then I might question why, like internally, why am I, am I doing this for the right reason? Okay. So then the next thing you got to think about is, what is the likely outcome of this situation? Right? You're never going to know the actual outcome because you're not in control of it. That's the GM response part. But what is the likely outcome based on your understanding of the situation? And is that something that you want to have happen right now in the game?
Yep. That's important because you might have some idea what you want to do, but this might not be the time or the place to have it happen, especially with other players around.
Yes. Which brings us to the next one. Which
is, who else is affected? It's one thing to make a decision that puts your character in less control because you're giving yourself consent.
Yeah.
However, it's another when your action also affects someone else in a scene or possibly later in the game.
Yeah. I mean, right. Like if you make this non-optimal decision and I have to come rescue you, right? Like maybe I'm not, well, let's not say rescue because that's way further. Let's say you make the non-optimal decision and now I'm also getting shot at.
Let's talk about the opening sequence, which was, in theory, Bob's character blew up our ship.
Right.
Okay. That could have all sorts of negative repercussions. Now, obviously, we both thought it was a good idea and went along with it.
Yeah.
But if that was something he did just because it was his way to get out of the situation without upsetting the girl that he's in love with, it still could have affected the rest of the group as, hey, we no longer have that resource available and now we're all upset about it. We're not.
Well, also imagine what if Bob blows up the ship and didn't tell you first?
Exactly.
Yeah. Like what if Bob was just like on his turn? I was like, cool, Bob, what do you do? And he's like, I take out the detonator and blow up the ship. And you're just like, what? Yeah. So who's affected by your non-optimal decision is important. The next one I will bring up is the mood of the table, right? We need to understand where the rest of the group is to deal with this non-optimal decision you're about to make. Are they in the right space?
Yep.
Are they ready for something unprepared or chaotic to occur? Or maybe everybody's super focused on some objective, like getting out of this, like getting out of Ravenloft, or let's just try to survive this encounter with the dragon, whatever.
Sometimes survival is paramount.
Yeah, exactly. And it may not be, like, everybody might not be in a place for somebody to go full Leroy Jenkins.
It also could be it can also be tonal because we've had lots of times when you're playing a game where you can tell that one or two players are trying to have a serious situation. If somebody decides to just go all Looney Tunes crazy in that situation, they're going to break the mood.
Bonkers.
Yeah, bonkers. Thank you. Thank you. I'm getting there. Looney Tunes bonkers.
Bob and I just hucking synonyms at you.
Yep. Bonkers. You can suddenly get to that point where you're changing the mood for some of the players at the table. And you need to bring it back into where you want it to be.
Yeah.
So that can break it. All right. So the next thing we have to be concerned about is where we are in the story. Well, this can happen anywhere. There are better and worse places for plot twists to occur. Are you in a place where you want a plot twist to occur?
Right. Again, you might be like just about to like make your escape. Maybe that's a great time to have a non-optimal decision, or maybe you're just about to open the vault and you don't want somebody complicating things because you're, where you are in the story.
And sometimes it can just be where you are in the longer narrative. I mean, I've been in some games where we're having a good time, but you know what? We're done with this planet. I really just want to go to the next part of the story. I want this adventure to be done with, and we don't need one more complication that keeps us here dealing with this character that we're, because there are times you get an adventure that you're having fun with the people you're with, but the story isn't necessarily going in a way that you're enjoying. And hey, we're almost done. We're going to move on to something else. And having something stymie that can be a problem.
Yeah, like a non-optimal decision during the denouement.
Yeah.
like, hey, we're packing this up and getting out of here. Why are we complicating things right now? Right? Like, let's just like, it's time to go. Get on the ship. It's time to like take back off for the next planet, whatever. Yeah, I agree. Okay, so all of those things that we just named above, like, you need to make that bit of mental calculus in the middle of the game, right? Now, in all likelihood, if you are kind of an experienced player, especially if you're an experienced improv player, these kinds of things are the things that you're doing that you may just not even be aware of, right? It's what we call like good timing, right? This is what good timing looks like, is all of those things. Where are you in the story? Where are you tone-wise? Why are you doing this? Have you thought about the actions of getting other people involved in this? All of that. That's, again, and I think good timing is a way to oversimplify that, right? Like, this mental calculus is happening on some level, whether you're aware of it or not. But as we like to do here on the show, we like to break these things open and show you all the little parts.
Yep.
Okay, so the takeaway from all of this is that your non-optimal action only sometimes occurs in a vacuum. Right. And when it doesn't, it then can affect other people, other players, and then we get to consent issues. And I don't say that in a bad way. I'm saying that in a, when we get to a place that involves consent, we need to engage acquiring consent. So the action you think you may be taking has the chance to impact other characters. And if you're doing that without their consent, it's generally, anytime you're doing something without somebody's consent, it's generally a bad idea. And, it can annoy or anger other players. I've totally seen this happen. Right? Well, let's do it for instance.
Yeah. For Bob and I are wounded after escaping the Rizal Syndicate, and we land at the spaceport. We're in port. We're looking for a doctor, and I see my rival, Talus, and he's there with his crew. And even though we're both wounded, I just draw my blaster and start firing at him. Sure.
So non-optimal, right? Getting into a fight when you're outnumbered and wounded, right? Absolutely non-optimal. But now Bob's involved in the fight because they're going to return fire. And maybe Bob wasn't wanting to get into a fight. Yeah. Maybe Bob's puddle is big, right? And what happens now if in that fight Bob gets killed?
Yep. Oh no.
Right?
Yes.
Right. Okay. So how do we take that same situation, the same non-optimal idea, and turn it into a consent and add consent to it?
So when I say Attilas, my hand goes my blaster, and I look over at Bob. Are you ready?
So if Bob gives consent,
my wounds are mostly minor, and I've got this stim tab. I'm in.
And if he doesn't give consent?
Oh, hell no. Let's get patched up first, then we can find where their ship is docked. We'll go sabotage it. You can have some fun.
One of my favorites is always look over. I'm like, I've got an idea, or I've got a plan. And then they're going to ask, well, what are you thinking? Go, no, that's not a good idea. Or yeah, let's do that. Always find a way to get consent from the players before you do something.
Yes. Absolutely. Right. It's that little change, right? That little change of being like, oh, I want this thing. I want this fight with Attilas. I'm going to make it happen right now. To, I want this fight, but I should check with the person in the scene with me. Hey, Bob, what do you think? Now, we did that consent thing in character, which if you're playing an if you're big into immersion and you want to stay in character, the example we gave works perfectly fine. It would have been equally fine if Jerry had just turned and looked at Bob and was like, I'm going to gun Attilas' ass down right here. And Bob would have been like, fuck off. I've got like 4 hit points. Don't fucking do it.
Yeah.
Right? Yep. It doesn't matter whether you do it in the narrative or you do it in the meta. That's a preference thing. Yep. Right? Like, we as players at our tables play pretty loose with meta, right? Like, meta discussions are pretty normal at our tables, and that discussion can easily happen player to player. But because some people really like to play immersive, that's no reason to give up consent. There's an easy way to fold that consent into the narrative and actually make it work.
Yeah.
Okay. So see, so just by taking that moment and having a little bit of consent, Bob is consulted before Jerry takes his non-optimal action. And I'm not saying you have to get permission from the table for every action you take, right? Like you have autonomy of action. But to be a good player, if you are going to take an action and a non-optimal action at that, that's going to make things less controlled, I think you do actually have a responsibility of getting consent from people who are directly affected by that action. I don't think you have to ask. I don't think you have to ask Tony, who's like back on the ship, whether it's okay that Jerry opens fire. But I do think you have to ask Bob, who's standing next to you and could easily be gunned down.
We also should ask Tony, who's back on the ship, before we blow up the ship.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Tony, you might want to get off the ship.
Yeah.
Right.
And mind you, the other part of this is that you can have, if you want to stay in character, it's perfectly good to get consent from the players, even if the characters might not have given consent, if the players do, because that might generate some fun role-playing down the line.
Oh, yeah.
That's fine. As long as the players are all on board, then go with it.
Exactly. Right. I mean, let's be clear that the actual consent is player to player. Right. The manner in which you get the consent, whether you do it in character or at meta, is totally up to you. And yeah, there's a perfect place for doing the kind of thing where you get meta consent. And then like you meet up with Tony and Tony's like, cool, where's the man of war? And Jerry's like, I blew, Bob's like, I blew it up. Yeah. I mean, right. And then Tony's character is like, you did what? Even though Tony has known the whole time. Yeah. Yeah. Totally fun. Totally
exactly.
Fun.
I mean, in our opening scene, it's kind of obvious that while Bob got Jerry's consent before blowing up the ship, there's a good chance he didn't get Machus's consent. And Machus was like, you blew up my ship.
Right.
And it's going to make for some fun encounters on the line. But everybody's on the same page and you've got consent from the table itself, which is what's important.
Yeah.
Now, if you don't have that consent and you do it anyway, you're just being a bad player, and don't be a dick.
I don't often let us say things like being a bad player, but this is the case where you are being a bad player.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
And also, so kind of leaning back into last week's episode a little, this is why having some expectation setting done through session 0 works out to be really important when it comes to these kinds of decisions in games.
It's going to give you boundaries to work with and gives all players an expectation of what we could be seeing happening.
Yeah, like, I mean, if we all are like, hey, we're playing this like freewheeling space opera kind of thing where, all sorts of wacky stuff happens, as opposed to we're playing, vac suit traveler, where, you could die if you fail your vac suit roll. Like, there's a difference about whether you want to make optimal versus non-optimal decisions in those games.
You could even do it as a GM with the player. I did a sci-fi game a couple years ago where one of the things I wanted to do was have the players need to get a new ship. So I was going to destroy their existing ship. But that ship was owned by one of the players. So before that happened, out of game, I sat down and said, I've got this idea for a scenario. How are you going to feel if I completely destroy your ship? And we talked about it a little bit to see, what did they want out of it so they could still get the things they wanted. Okay, great. We're going to keep moving on from there. But as a GM, you can also help to engage the players in this. Like, you guys understand what's going to be going on so that you're not just getting screwed over. There's a reason why the ship is being destroyed. You're going to have an opportunity to get a new one and something different. But as long as everybody's okay with it, you can move on. So sometimes as a GM, you get the players involved.
Yeah, I can't agree more. I mean, we could get into a whole side thing on consent. I could tell you how I could have taken what I thought was going to be a super cool session a super cool session. Bob's already laughing of Corporation.
I know the one you're talking about because
if I had gotten consent I think everyone would have had a lot of fun with that episode.
Yeah.
But I was being clever. And by being clever, I did not get player consent. And ultimately, I was the dick in that situation. Bob, just so that people who haven't listened in a while, can you just put a pin when we get to the break? I will tell that story.
Yes.
Because it's not germane to this discussion, but it is a very good consent discussion. And it's a great example of how to fuck up consent in a game. And I totally fucked that up. Anyway, so session 0, really good, right? For expectation setting. The other part is having really good table communication and a consent revoking tool like an X card is really important. If Bob went to blow up the Man-O-War and Jerry, not Mock Juice, Jerry had a problem, this would have been a perfect place to hit the X card and be like, whoa, whoa, whoa. We need to talk before we blow up the Man-O-War. Right? And that's a thing that we don't... I'm going to say this. We spend a lot of time focusing on the X card as a safety tool, as in scary stuff that could trigger us and things like that. I think that one of the best things that Alex Roberts ever did with the X card in For the Queen is that Alex shifted she kept the safety part of the X card, but she amended to it content editing. Right? So you can use the X card in For the Queen to just take out a card that you don't like or isn't applicable. Consent revoking, right, is a tool that you can use not just for safety, but you could use it for content. And like blowing up something like the campaign ship might be one of those moments where it's like, whoa, stop, we need to have a conversation about this. I'm totally not feeling unsafe here, but I'm not okay with what you're about to do.
Exactly.
Right. I'm going to be pissed at you in a second if this action goes through.
Because at the end of the day, even with your expectations set where you want them to be, you always have the right to revoke consent. And that's going to kind of set the play. And among your fellow players, that works really well.
Yeah, you can, even if you've all agreed during session 0, you can still say no.
That's how it works. So, non-optimal play is also a kind of beat. Taking one of these actions is a change in beat from competency or control building to incompetency or control diminishing. As with any other kind of beat, we need to balance these. How do we approach that, Jerry?
All right. So, well put, Bob. Non-optimal play often slows down the productivity in a game.
Right. Quick reminder, productivity being the group's ability to move through the plot of an adventure, going from the beginning of the adventure to the middle of the adventure to the end of the adventure.
And so with the analysis we do, when we contemplate one of these choices in the game, we need to think about whether this is the right time to diminish control and just how many non-optimal decisions have recently happened. We said about there are times in the game when you and the group may want to maintain or increase control.
And maybe during a tense battle, when you're near the objective of a mission, when your in-game resources like hit points, bennies, fuel, ammo, whatever, are running low.
In those times, you may want to maintain being productive and move the game along to a safer place.
Right? This goes back to the whole Leroy Jenkins thing.
Exactly. And in that meme, the guild is about to start a raid into monsters, which is a tense time. Everyone there is focused on the upcoming raid and maintaining their resources. And so Leroy's non-optimal decision to rush in now put all that in jeopardy and could and did get everybody killed. Basically acted kind of selfishly and impulsively, ruined everybody's fun.
Sure. I mean, I think we all know that thing was staged, but still it has its roots in full-on reality. Like, I have played that table. I have seen that character before it had the name Leroy Jenkins. All right. So the other thing that you need to be aware of is how many non-optimal actions have recently occurred in the game.
One non-optimal action is a twist, but many of them can end up being a farce.
Right. And that is going to, that's what you need to balance here. Is your game, like, was that a cool, like, woo twist? Or is it like, oh no, this went wrong too, right? Like, so depending on the game you're playing, too many non-optimal decisions can actually change the feel of the game.
So imagine a cartel game, and Bob is playing the Sicario. He runs down his target to the marketplace in an incredible chase, corners him in an alley, knocks out the bodyguard, is standing over the target, draws his gun, and decides it jams.
Right? That's tense as hell.
Oh, yeah.
Now, imagine the same chase, but Bob decides to jump over the churro stand. None of this character's not very skilled. Fails and falls in the churro stand. It's covered in sugar and cinnamon. Then he decides to take the shortcuts past the policeman having lunch, again knowing he's not skilled at this, and bumps into the police officer, who gets up, and now the police officer's chasing him. Then he decides to cut off his cord running across the street, again not skilled, fails his roll, bounces off a car, and takes some damage. Then finally finds his target in the alley, draws his gun, and then decides it jams.
Right. It's a little...
That's not cartel.
That's right. That's a little slapstick.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
It's a Saturday morning cartoon.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Covered in sugar, running past cops. Right. All of those things. Right. So knowing the tone of your game, knowing the tone of the game you're playing, you need to modulate your non-optimal decisions to kind of stay in that right tone.
Now, in Cartel, that last scene would be a little too slapstick. But in a Musketeer game, it could work perfectly well.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just add in somebody in the background screaming, D'Artagnan!
D'Artagnan! Don't lose your head. All right. So you not only need to account for your non-optimal actions in terms of beats, but you also have to kind of look over the rest of the table as well, right? If everyone in the last few minutes has taken a non-optimal action, you could be heading into that tone-breaking area. And again, you might not. You might just be hitting the point where you're in that act 2 and everything goes wrong for everyone.
Yep.
But you got to feel this, right? I don't think there's a good way to explain this other than if you understand your genre, you will know if it feels right. And that's when you know to do it, or when you know when the action's going to hit well, or whether it's going to break tone.
And it can be in the same kind of game 2 different ways. I mean, if you're playing Star Wars, there's a huge difference between the Bespin Cloud City in Empire Strikes Back and Jar Jar Binks in the beginning of The Phantom Menace.
And that, sorry, Schmitty, because I know Schmitty's in the chat room, and that is what infuriates most older people about Jar Jar Binks, is that Jar Jar breaks that tone, right? It's one thing when Han Solo goes to start up the Millennium Falcon and it makes the weird sounds, right?
It's not my fault.
Yeah.
Right. But it's another thing when Jar Jar sticks his head between the pod racer things and his tongue goes numb, and it's the thing that I just dislike about Jar Jar is, and now that I understand it, right? It's the tonal shift.
Yep.
It's the tonal shift because he's also in direct contrast to Liam Neeson.
Yeah.
Right? Who's cool as fuck, right?
Though I've got to say that one meme, which was what is it? What's Liam Neeson's line? Language doesn't make one intelligent. And somebody put a meme with Jar Jar well, fuck you. You just came through my giant underground city. We've got force fields that protect the entire planet. You just roaded our sub from point A to point B. Fuck you and your intelligent people thing. You know what? And I would have respected Jar Jar for that shit.
Yeah, you've got Qui-Gon on one side of that scene, and then you've got Jar Jar in the other, and it's one of these is fucking with the other. Yeah. And I get it. Schmitty's much younger than I am, and it was clearly the target audience for Phantom Menace, right? Clearly the target audience based on his vehement defense of Jar Jar Binks, which I will respect. I'm old and crusty, and that's why I don't like Jar Jar Binks. But I am young enough that I love murder teddy bears.
Yes.
So I'm young enough that I love Ewoks, but not Gundams. Okay. Anyway.
Okay. So that covers the player side of non-optimal play. We're going to take a break. We're going to catch up with the chat room. But first, let me tell you about Pandas Talking Games.
I love that show.
That other show, Bill and Senda answer your questions about RPGs from the perspective of one-shots and campaigns with some panda silliness. And if you've ever seen those GIFs or full-on videos of the pandas rolling around, or the ones where they were interrupting the keeper that was trying to clean up the pen.
Oh my God, the keeper! That one is hysterical
to the nth degree. And if you listen to this show, trust me, you will love it.
If you listen to it, you will love it.
And that's not hyperbole.
Oh, I'm just going to tell you. I opened my phone real quick, and now I feel super old. Empire Records marks its 25th anniversary.
Yep.
I'm just gonna
today.
I'm just gonna put on my oxygen mask for a few minutes. Just Rex Manning Day. Just 25 years later.
Yeah.
I feel like in honor of that, we should play. What do you call it?
Save the music.
Oh my God, I love that game.
The funny part about Rex Manning Day and Empire Records is I just saw Empire Records like last year. So to me, it's not old.
You and me. Yep, that was part of our Twitter movie
one of the
watch.
Misdirected Mark
Double feature.
Misdirected Mark word scramble.
It's such
I need one
good...
of those boards so I can just hit the button. We need to get on that.
Dude, we totally can get you. We could totally get you one of those.
Okay,
was,
I know what you.
That was double feature: Empire Records and Streets of Fire.
Oh yeah.
Oh man, Streets of Fire.
A rock and roll fable, baby.
Oh,
Streets of Fire's got some problems.
Just one.
it's got a problem.
It's not a small problem.
No, it's not.
No, it's a big problem, but it's not multiple problems. It's just one
problem.
No, it's not multiple problems, but it's one really big problem.
Yes.
I had a visceral reaction to it. I totally forgot it was there, and then all of a sudden I was like, "Oh, I'm not okay with that."
I had forgotten about it too.
Yes. For those who don't know, he punches his girlfriend to knock her out so she doesn't come back with him, which is a really bad thing.
Yeah,
he doesn't like hit her over the head, so that she doesn't.
Boom!
Hooks
her right in the face,
right across. Yeah, not good.
I was very uncomfortable.
Guys, don't do that. If you want to make sure that your loved one does not follow you.
It's just called assault, right? Like,
that's not good. Don't do that.
I was very uncomfortable with that one. I was not. Anyway, we
on
digress.
a happier note.
Other than that, the movie's good. So
how's the chat room?
So Ange had a comment. She has a friend who has his own game system and world that he's designed that has a species like Kender that are simply called bastards, which tells you a lot about that species. Yeah. The general conceit is that they have no sense of self-preservation. She loved playing a bastard, but she hated it when anybody else played one. And that can seriously cause some friction if you're playing a bastard and you're really playing it.
Here's my question, right? And I think I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What safety measures are baked into the game for the person playing the bastard as not to piss off the rest of the table?
Yeah. It's the same problems that we had back when people were playing Kender in the 80s and 90s. A lot of players for Kender played the Kender as an excuse to piss off the other player. I mean, and it didn't help that was it second or third, one of the editions, they wrote up the Kender, and in the actual book that Wizards put out, or TSR put out, it said, if you are not annoying the other players, you're not playing Kender properly.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's horrible. And took that as an excuse to be, I'm just playing my character. Since there are good Kender players out there. There are really good Kender players out there who know how to play them properly to make them part of the group's fun, not hurting the group.
Well, and the trick is understanding. First of all, that's terrible advice about the Kender. Second of all, it's terrible advice. Yeah. Annoying your players is exactly not what you should be doing. But
it's fun.
Here's the problem, right? D&D is not a game, especially 3rd edition D&D, is not a game that supports non-optimal play. It doesn't encourage you to make bad decisions. Bad decisions get your characters killed. So when a player who's playing a character that is basically designed to make bad decisions is in a game where there's no support for bad decisions. You have just created the character that is going to upset the rest of the party, right? And now you're just like, you're swimming upstream on this thing. If you're playing so if you made a Kender in Dungeon World, right? You could make a move where it's like, when you do something bad, you get this token, like not bad. When you do something impulsive, whatever, reckless, you get this token. And this token gives you or another player a chance at a reroll or roll with advantage or whatever, right? So the idea is that when the Kender does something impulsive, karma balances itself out down the line.
Yeah.
And that's the thing when we talked about mechanics, we talked about ways to mitigate non-optimal decisions, right? The buffering, right? Or I'm sorry, not mitigation, buffering, right? That would be a buffering tool. But in D&D, especially 3rd edition D&D, there's no buffering tool. There's not even an experience point bonus for making those bad decisions. It literally is just like, oh, did you want to play a jerk? Because this is the character where you get to say, I'm just playing my character, which, and allow me to drag out my soapbox for a second, is the shittiest excuse that has ever been created in role play. It is not an excuse for any type of bad behavior. It is just shitty. It's just somebody being shitty and trying to hide behind it.
It's the same problem we get with people that play masks. A lot of people, they put the delinquent on the table as a character to play, and you can almost tell the people that are automatically gravitated towards it some want to play it just because it gives them an excuse to be the antisocial douchebag.
I will say this: I have on more than one occasion not put the delinquent into the character sheets on the table.
I won't put it down. I simply won't put it down. I have very few player groups that I will put it down for. And there are some that I love my players. I'm like, I know this is not the one that lets you guys play.
Oh yeah, with the right table, definitely. If you're at a con and you have no idea who's showing up, that playbook doesn't hit the table.
The one time I allowed the delinquent in a con game was that QCC game I ran where I knew everyone at the table. Right, that was Gator, Mo, Senda. Who else was there? Everybody was there. Schmitty was there. Nor was there. So I handed out the delinquent because I was like, I implicitly trust everyone at this table. Whoever picks up the delinquent is safe. But I will not put the delinquent out for con. The other thing I would say is that if somebody rushes to pick up the delinquent, then I want to have a conversation. Right? Like, so what interests you about this character? Right? Like, and I honestly thought, when we played Masks, I thought Tony was going to take the delinquent. But I've now come to understand Tony better, and now I know why he didn't pick up the delinquent. Because the delinquent is interesting, but the Nova is what Tony was like,
the Nova might as well be labeled parentheses Rainmaker.
The Nova was, and Tony totally embraced the Nova. Like, anyway, that's a whole other aside. Okay, cool. And so Ange answered my question, right? There were no safety mechanisms on that game, right? The bastard is just, having a better understanding now of kind of looking at how this stuff works. You can just see how bad of an idea that that is in a game where you don't have mechanics that support non-optimal decisions. Because if everyone else is playing optimally and you're the person who's playing non-optimally for, quote, fun, like, what are you doing? You're just pissing everyone off. And that's not to say that there shouldn't be Kenders in D&D. That's just saying that D&D doesn't support non-optimal play. It makes playing Kenders hard. It's easy in Dragonlance, the novel, because they just control it through the writing, right? Tasselhoff is delightfully annoying in those books because he's annoying in all the right places.
I would be far more willing to let a Kender Troublemaker character roll around my table stirring things up if I was getting handed a token every once in a while. Like, don't worry.
I mean,
you can use this later.
I'll tell you the game I would play, I would allow a Kender in immediately would be Fate. What's your, I mean, just your trouble aspect is Kender.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yep.
like it, and I'll feed you Fate points.
Oh, like, I need to play a Fate game now where I'm like a human being, and I'm going to have a trouble aspect of human Kender.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yes. Human Kender sums up
Human
your
Kender.
whole.
There you go.
There you go.
What
That's
does
it.
it mean? Think about it.
But a Fate game would be amazing for that because Fate does a really good job of supporting non-optimal play.
Buffering all over the place.
Yeah, and rewarding, right? Like it's, and all the other players will love it because, as we know, when you spend your Fate points and load up other aspects on the table and stuff, you like suddenly like everybody benefits.
Yep.
Yeah, good stuff.
All right.
Anything else?
Good chat.
Can I tell the
Tell the story.
We have one more chat room thing.
Oh yeah, gotta do that first.
Ange caught the fact that somebody referred to it as a GIF.
No, who said that?
Somebody referred to it as a GIF, not a GIF.
That's because it is a GIF.
You're wrong. This is wrong. This is all right. Let me tell the corporation story.
Tell your
really
corporation
quick.
story.
So a while ago, I was running corporation many years ago, and for a while, the players were complaining to me that they didn't have enough money to buy all the really cool high-end gear that was in the many, many books of gear. Like every supplement had a gear section in it. So there was like more gear than you could know what to do in this game. But I was hesitant to just give out more money because that gear solves a lot of problems. And every time this gear shows up, like once it's out there, I'm not going to be able to get it back.
Right.
So I was like, what if I could? So, unbeknownst to the players, I concocted this idea.
You were being clever.
I was being clever. Never be clever. So I cloned the players without their knowledge, and I let them go on a mission where I gave them all the gear they wanted, and did not tell them they were clones. I just gave them all the gear, sent them on the mission, and let them like buy up and use everything. And then the mission turned out to be a suicide mission that no one survived. They fought this whole thing. They uploaded this virus into this nano factory core, turning the nano factory into a cloud of disassemblers. They started to run away, and one by one, the disassemblers caught up and destroyed all of them. The last player made it out of the building to the evac zone, only to find the ship was never there, and died in the middle of this valley. And then the players woke up poor again, but having completed the mission, and they were pissed. They were pissed, and I was stunned because it was so clever. Like, I gave you what you wanted, and you spent all that stuff, and then they were pissed because they died and they didn't get to keep it. And I was like, well, you can't keep it. Anyway, the point being is, with a little consent, we could have done that whole thing. I could have said like, hey, I want to give you guys a chance to play with all the high-end toys. I have some concerns. It's going to wreck the campaign balance going forward. What if we did like a one-off mission with clones or something where I'll let you guys gear up. You guys can just play God and tear through everything, but your clones aren't going to live. I think I could have sold that to that group.
Yeah, I would have bought it.
Yeah, I think everybody would have been like, I would rather keep the gear, but fuck it, I'll play this one-off game. And then we could have done it. And with a little consent, I think that whole adventure would have totally worked and everybody would have loved it. But I was so fucking clever about it. Listen, if you're a GM and that's the moment you're having as you're plotting out your game, I'm not saying it's always going to piss everyone off, but you're probably going to piss somebody off. Like, it has been my experience that you are only entertaining yourself at this point. It's very rare when you screw over players like that they're going to turn around and be like, bravo, Phil, bravo.
Magic 8 Ball says it is likely.
Right. Yeah. Like, it was such a bad idea. Like,
yes, it was terrible.
It is exactly the kind of, like, that was the phase where I was super into my own GMing.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I was enjoying my GMing like way too much and less about being a servant to the game and providing like a quality experience for everyone. I was more like, I was like that quote from Gladiator, right? Like, are you not amused? Right? Like,
look how good I am at this.
Right.
I can be clever.
I definitely in the arc of me being a GM, I definitely went through a phase where I was way too into my own bullshit. Like,
luckily, it was only a phase.
That's right.
It was a long phase, man. Like, there's a lot of years behind that. Mm-hmm. Anyway,
we went through those days.
Yeah, that's a thing.
All right.
Oh, let's get back into it.
Thank you, chat room, once again. So,
good topics.
In the roundtable, we're going to get personal and talk about non-optimal play as players, starting with this question, Phil.
How big of a role are mechanics in encouraging you to engage in non-optimal play in a game? So when you're playing a game, if the game is devoid of rules to support non-optimal play, how likely are you to engage in it?
That's a different question.
Not really.
Well, I thought about this, and I'll be honest, the mechanics really aren't as much of a concern. I will do non-optimal play at the drop of a hat if everybody's playing along with it. I mean, it's nice, but I normally base that decision on the GM and the other players. I played a lot of games where the GM offered me a Benny or a hero point, and I refused because either I had enough resources or I wanted the story to go another direction. Now, if they offer me 2 Bennies, I'm going to change my mind. But it's more about what would be fun to play. I mean, you've got this... every once in a while, it's just what we talked about earlier, where the GM's like, oh, I'll give you this Benny. I play a lot of Savage Worlds. I can play as Benny if you do X. And I'm like, no. I'm aiming towards doing Y. I want to go over here and do this thing. And you offering me that Benny actually makes me trust you even less because of what you offer it. But and that's because of the GM sometimes. But also sometimes I'm there, but also at the same time, there are lots of games that have absolutely no reward system whatsoever for that. And we'll do suboptimal play because it's what's going to be fun for everybody at the table and get their consent to do it. So it's a incentive, but it's not a very strong incentive. And to be honest, and Phil will back me up on this, when I'm in Fate, I never take any of the compels.
Yeah.
Partially because I didn't understand the game. I was like, no, we're already screwed. I don't want to screw us over even more. And because I didn't understand the mechanics of that game, but it doesn't always occur. We took suboptimal play because it was more fun. You know, when we found out that the main bad guy's sidekick henchman, you know, well, where do you know him from? Oh, well, we're having an affair. You know, that's suboptimal and screwed everybody over. And then, well, does anybody in the group know about it? And Bob was like, I know about it. And we rolled with it. It made the game a lot more fun, and Phil did a great job with that. But yeah, I don't think that the mechanics are as important to me as what we're going to do with the story and who the players are and the GM we're with. So, Bob, how about you?
Yeah, I'm with Jerry on this one. The mechanics aren't as important if I know the GM and the rest of the table are on board with it and are open to me stirring the pot like that. Yep. Obviously, if the mechanics support it, that's even better. But yeah, if I've got the rest of the table with me, I'll be more willing to go and jump into the pool.
Mm-hmm. I think I'm the outlier on this one. I hate and these are my own control issues. So in games that have good mechanics for it, I'm all for making bad decisions, right? I like it. The game's designed for it. I'm cool with it, and the game kind of will help me not only help me make bad decisions, non-optimal decisions, but will also kind of buffer me. And again, trust with GM, et cetera. But in games that don't have it, I tend to play more optimally, not overanalyzing, but I am less of a risk taker in a game where a single roll could wipe me out, right? Like, I'm less likely to be like, well, it's a DC 35 to jump across that bridge. You know, if you get a nat 20, you're going to make it. And I'll be like, okay, I'm doing it. Like that, I won't do it. Right? Like, I definitely play more conservative in games that are neutral to it. And I think it has a lot to do with my own level of control issues where if the game's not looking out for me and I don't necessarily trust that the GM, like if I don't know the GM well, then the person who's looking out for me is me.
Now, you have to remember there are also games that are designed to kind of punish the like you'll notice with one or two exceptions, we tend to play DCC pretty close to the vest.
I don't think DCC is not a game where I would encourage making stupid.
That being said, we have had one person who ended up as a pair of eyes for an entire adventure. And we have a player who still plays now that regularly licks things in general, even though it's a bad idea to do so because it's in character. But yeah, I wouldn't take a lot of risky chances in DCC. And the same thing in Call of Cthulhu. Call of Cthulhu is a game that's designed that bad mistakes and suboptimal decisions may get you killed. You know, the whole world is trying to kill you in that game. So it's another game where I don't think I take as many suboptimal decisions. But that's more the campaign than the GM or the mechanics in that game.
Yeah. I mean, and so for instance, that licking thing, right? So we have a character who, since the first adventure, has been known for eating really gross things in the game. And it's kind of now an in-game shtick that Ratol eats spoiled things, monster parts, things like that. If I was, and this goes back to last week, if I was the punishing GM, right? I would be like, cool, make a fortitude check. Now you're sick.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. But instead, and again, this goes back to the GM thing, right? Of how I choose to react to the world. In a lot of cases, I just describe what it tastes like and we go on.
Yeah.
Right. Because I don't actually want it to be a thing in the game. I like that it's a thing for Sean's character. Yep. Because it's very much, kind of the same way that Jerry's character is dumb like a box of rocks. And that works out great, that Lady Bamisa often misunderstands things in the correct ways.
But she's got the smart sword now, so she's good.
It's even worse.
Yep.
The sword's not actually intelligent, but she thinks it is. So I like those things. But again, if I was like, if I was, we're going to play this hardcore or whatever, like I would just, make fortitude checks and just punish. But instead, I'm just like, yeah, cool. That's a narrative thing. It tastes really gross, but it's totally Ratol. We all love it.
Yeah. Go for it.
But I'm definitely one of those people. I have control issues. Like I don't want to lose my character. Like I don't want to die. I like in games where characters die, I'm not super great at having my character die. At higher level D&D, I get better at it because death is really just a resource problem. But in like low levels, I will protect my character and move it forward.
That's also something I think that needs to be taken into account is how invested are you in the game and the character? If it's a one shot, I'm more likely to take thoughtful choices. Or if it's a campaign where I just haven't found that connection to my character yet, where sometimes I'm in games where I'm like, you know what? If this character dies, they die. Even if I've been playing it I've been in campaigns where I just can't quite find that hook that makes the character super interesting to me. And we're 7 weeks in, and while I'm having fun, if this character dies, they're dead. It's okay. And then I'm more likely to take more risky challenges with that. But if it's a character that I'm really invested in, and Lady Bamisa is one of them, I'm less likely to take chances unless it fits the character's motivations.
Now, the character that I was very comfortable taking back, like non-optimal decisions with was Corin.
Yes.
And barbarians, the barbarian playbook, barbarians get a +1 when rolling for the dark gates, the
black gates, yeah.
The black gates, right? You get a +1. And on several occasions, I lived.
Yep.
Yeah, I just like I'm with you, Jer. Like in a one shot, I'm in a one shot. I don't want to go out early, so I will be more conservative in the beginning of the game, and then towards like once I see where the climax of the game is, then I'm like, all right, what happens at this point, right? Like, and I don't think I've been in a campaign where I've ever. No, I can't say that. I'm sure there've been some campaigns where I would have been like, yeah, if this character dies, he dies. Yeah. I just can't think of one off the top of my head, but I'm sure that's...
The last game we played, Aegon, I was having a good time, great GM, great players. I wasn't feeling my character at all. If that character died each week, they died. It was,
Yeah, no, I get it.
Partially because of the design of the game, it's a board game. But I would have been this, if they die, they die. Yeah. So we took other chances and did things because... we played like 8 sessions, and even the last session, I'm like, and so that happens with some games.
Yeah. All right, we kind of went deep on this particular one. Let's move on to the next question.
Yep. All right, as a player, what's your biggest motivation for engaging in non-optimal play?
Okay, so for me, it's going to vary, but more often than not, it's going to come down to my comfort level. If I'm comfortable that the rest of the table is good, then I'm gonna be way more likely to go for it. That's gonna be the biggest motivation. After that, then mechanics that support and stuff like that. But comfort level. If I feel like the rest of the table can handle it, then yeah, I'll be it. I'll be doing it. What about you, Phil?
I like when. I think my biggest motivation. So if I'm going to take a non-optimal action, I want one that is going to, I want something that's either going to complicate or make the scene awkward, right? So that thing that Jerry said before, like, how do you know this person? Oh, I had an affair with them. Right? Mm-hmm. Like that is exactly the bullshit I'd like to do. Right? Like I want the scene, like I don't do it very often to provoke fights. I want awkward. I love awkward in a game, right? I love the, now we're, like there's the, there's the ambassador and his wife. And I've, and I've had a torrid affair with the ambassador, and now like we have to like shake hands for the first time and pretend like we don't know each other, right? But of course, I want the Benny, so I'm not gonna pretend we don't know each other. I'm gonna drop some hint, in front of his wife that, like, oh hey, I haven't seen you forever, but I still, I still keep that thong of yours or whatever, right? Like, I just like, I want it uncomfortable. I love uncomfortable and awkward. And if that is going to, if that's going to screw things up in a scene, or whatever, like, I love it. I love that idea. So that's my motivation. I will always look for what will make this awkward for me, for everyone else. What about you? That was me. So what about you, Jer?
It's the same thing. I like to do it to make the story more interesting. Get more role-playing out of it. Get some more role-playing hooks. I don't want to do it to start a fight either. I want to do it to create some potential encounters later on down the line to make things awkward or strange. Or sometimes you can complicate things in a way to down the line give yourself an advantage in another way that's not a mechanical advantage, just an advantage in the story if you go forward. And that's a lot of fun because you can do, like we said, in your Queen's Musketeers game, the very fact that now my character was having a secret relationship with another spy meant that every time we encountered each other, there was going to be this, will they, won't they, and how far will it take the relationship,
awkward, right? Like,
and and the fact that Bob joined in with it because he was the only other, all the players knew about it, he was the only other character that knew about it, meant that every time this happened, he was either going to help us cover it up or try to keep me from getting into trouble or whatever. And it meant for, it never led to a fight. It always led to...
No, it was, right. It's and again, as the GM of that, as soon as you put it on the table, I'm like, oh, I'm all in, right? Because you're doing the thing I love. Like, oh, you just made this awkward? Oh, yeah. Like, we get to have some awkward scenes now? Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Like, here's your fate point, and don't worry, this is coming back. Yeah.
I mean, this came out, the same thing happened in, and Bob was there for this, in Chris's Eberron game. The very first campaign arc ended, and throughout the entire campaign, we've been working for the Dark Lanterns in Breland. And we'd been off and on, basically doing spy missions and everything else. Along the line, my character had a romantic relationship with another member of the Dark Lanterns who was also a member of a prominent house. And in our last adventure, we ended up dealing with somebody who had been our adversary for 2/3 of the adventure, and now we were allied with him to stop a bigger threat. When we were done, the question was, do we help him or do we give all the information to our contact in the Dark Lanterns, who would then have enough to stop him and do a bunch of other things? And we realized that for the greater good, it was actually better to let his plans continue to go, because even though he was a threat to some of the things we were behind, he was a bigger threat to our enemy. And so we chose to help him at the end, and that caused us to sever our ties with the Dark Lanterns and caused my girlfriend to dump me and a bunch of other things. But we chose that because it was a much more interesting ending, and it made sense for our characters. But we got it all set up. There was a lot of fun, and it worked really well. And it made it more interesting. It would have been cool to actually have that relationship go on better and to have better resources from our patron, because the guy we helped didn't really give us any other help. He just kind of got in the way of the bigger bad, which is what we needed. So, which makes it complicated. It's really good. So that's me. So Bob, what's question 3?
All right. How do you gauge when to make a non-optimal choice versus when to make a more optimal one?
For me, it's definitely going to be a combination of genre and place in the story. So if the genre doesn't really support a lot of non-optimal decisions, I'm going to kind of keep mine. I'm going to kind of keep mine calm, right? Like, I'll pick a good one. Like, maybe I'll do one. If the game supports, right? If the game supports it, the GM supports, the table supports it. Like, if we're playing a Musketeers game, I'm going to make a few, right? Like, I'm going to insult somebody I shouldn't. I'm going to jump off of something I shouldn't. Those kinds of things, right? I'm just going to go do some of those things. But if we're playing, like, an intense, group of rat catchers in Warhammer Fantasy, first edition, like, I'm going to just make some, like, I'm going to stick to genre, right? I'm going to make, like, the best survivalist decisions I can make. So I usually gauge mine on those combinations of, does it work with the genre? And does it work with the genre? Does it work with like what we're doing, right? Like, I'm not as likely to make a non-optimal decision in the middle of a run in Cyberpunk. Like, that's how you wind up, that's how you wind up as parts. That's me.
Nobody wants to end up as parts, chummer.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, what's the quote from Cyberpunk? Dead is dead, parts is parts, dead guy is parts.
Exactly.
Yep. So,
what about you, Jer?
I think it's all about how much of the goal I want and where myself and the players want to go. I'll make a non-optimal choice during the climax if it makes for a better game and everybody's on board with it. It doesn't have to end the scenario if it's something that's really clever and interesting. And again, we're going to go right back to the example I gave you. This was literally the climax of the first half of the campaign. And at the last minute, we decided to side with our enemy against our ally because it made for a better story and also advanced our plot against the bigger bad guy. But that's because we had a really an amazing GM and a great group of players and we can all go there with it. I don't think there's any place in a game that I won't make a non-optimal choice, as long as it, number one, makes sense for the story, and number two, it makes sense for what the rest of the players want to do as well. That's why, like I said, I always have, I'm like, hey guys, I got an idea, or what do you think about this before we do it? And if they say, no, I don't think it's a good idea. Now, again, with the players I'm with, oftentimes out of character, I'll go, I've got an idea, and suddenly in character, we're having this amazing discussion between our characters that develops all sorts of stuff. That's when you love to see the GM just sit back and cackle gleefully because he's enjoying the show. I play with a lot of GMs, and I think part of the reason they're there is to watch the players entertain them. And it works that way, and I feel the same way. So I'll do it where it makes sense for the game, the character, and what the players want to do. So that's my answer. Bob?
Cool. Before I answer, I would just like to say with the weird vagaries in the Zoom virtual backgrounds, I've got Kylo Ren on my shoulder right now, and I feel like he's telling me, like, make the stupid call, do the thing, do the thing, do the thing, It's weird seeing his face there on my shoulder. Now he went away. I talked about him, and he's hiding. Yeah, I'm going to go back to comfort level, which is definitely going to be a thing for me in this. And then, of course, secondary to that, what's it going to do for the story? Is it going to make the story more interesting? Because the story being interesting is always a prime thing too. So I would lean that way. All right.
Excellent.
That is the trifecta. We've looked at non-optimal play from the mechanical view, from the GM's perspective, and as players.
Yep, we hope that you've enjoyed this multifaceted look and that it helps you think about non-optimal play in your upcoming games.
Now, let's check in one last time with the chat room so we can wrap this up.
All right. Excuse me, sorry. Go ahead.
So we did have one person pop in, Alex, who kind of came in, and I'm not sure if you saw the previous episodes, but was kind of asking about non-optimal play and things like that. And I think it's important to note, right, like kind of building on these 3 weeks, that what I think we can come out of it from looking at all 3 facets of this is that there are clearly games where non-optimal decisions work. They work for the group, they work for the GM, they work for the mechanics of the game. And there are definitely game groups that don't do non-optimal, right? The GM doesn't really support it. The game doesn't really have any mechanics that make that entertaining. And maybe the tone of that table is a table that likes to, execute, with some level of precision, right? Like they don't like getting into messy relationship stuff or things like that. I think the weird place is when those things aren't perfectly aligned, right? So the difficult things you run into is when a group really likes non-optimal play, but the game doesn't support it, or the players really like non-optimal play, but the GM doesn't, or one player in the group really likes non-optimal play and everyone else doesn't. So when it's an alignment, when the expectations are set and the mechanics are there and the group's on board and the genre supports it and all that, having those, non-optimal moments can just be so fantastically wild. And that's great. And on the flip side of it, there is nothing like taking down the boss monster in 4 turns with a precision attack where your entire group, making the best possible tactical and mechanical decisions, just drop the bad guy is, in the most badass way possible. Both are perfectly great play styles. Both have places inside the hobby. And it's really about just kind of understanding your own feels for it. What do you like? And, and then like syncing that and aligning it all the way down the line.
Cool.
Did I cover enough for you, Bob?
Yeah.
Was there anything else from the chat room?
All of a sudden, I'm like,
I was on a roll.
Yeah.
this friggin' tickle in it.
Good
Like,
job.
oh no.
Pretty much the chat room, we've just been talking about situations where people have had non-optimal play and different players that like the preference and so on. In the game I'm running, Schmitty and Chris are having a ongoing will they or won't they, are they going to start dating or not, constantly meet cutes and falling on top of each other and ending up in odd situations, and we're pushing hard for that now.
Yeah.
And Alexa Dyson.
Oh, sorry, it's Alexa. I'm looking at my.
Or Alex Addison, perhaps.
Addison. Okay.
All right, it's something.
Okay. Yeah.
I got the beginning part of it.
Definitely go back and listen to the previous 2 episodes, because in the first episode, because 2 weeks ago we talk about why Alex Addison. Great.
Oh, thanks,
Alex. 2 weeks ago we talk about what is not optimal play and kind of why you'd want to do it. And last week we talked about how, as a GM, you can use it, influence it, kind of support your players with it, give them reasons to do it, and so that you set up that safe space for the players to do it in. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, there are games just come back all the way back around, right? There are some games that could, there are games that do this, well, right? Passions de Passionés, which is the, Powered by the Apocalypse game that simulates telenovelas, right? Is a game that literally survives on poor decision making. Right? The game is nothing but poor decision making.
Yes.
Whereas, a really tight D&D game is not always the place for poor decision making. I think that we see that 5e has a little more flexibility in that than previous editions.
More forgiving.
But I wouldn't in Pathfinder 1e make some of the dumb decisions I make in other systems.
See, that's where you and I differ. That never stopped me in any of my games.
Yeah, well, that's fair, right? That's
not everybody's going to play the same way.
Nope. And that's not bad for you. I understand that. That's because I didn't get as attached to all my characters. I would if it's more fun, I don't care if I die. It'll be fun to see what happens. So you also need good GMs for that, though. So yeah, I do understand that. I agree 100%.
All right, shall we roll into the conversation corner?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let me do the. Boing, 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 boing. All right, kids. Here we are.
I don't remember what the bumper is for the conversation corner. It's been so long since I've heard it.
Oh, it's just like ethereal, like wong, wong, wong.
It ends with boom, 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 boom.
By the way, if people don't know, and I think we've covered this before, based on how we're wired up, I believe the chat room can hear sound effects.
Yep.
Everyone who's listening to the podcast can hear them. Jerry and Bob can hear them. Jerry and I cannot. Yeah. We're the only 2 people who can't hear any of the sound effects in the show.
Because I'm running it off of my laptop, so it's not going through anything that they can hear.
Correct. We rely on Bob to prompt us about
cues.
when we've transitioned.
All right. Conversation corner. Jerry, start us off.
All right. This week we did session 0 of Band of Blades.
Oh, yeah.
I know, Bob, you're going to talk about it, so I'm just going to let you do more of it. I'm having a good time, and I'm playing kind of the big barbarian fighter types. It's going to be a lot of fun. Again, I watched Dr. Sleep, and I thought it was a really good movie for me. I enjoyed it a lot. I think I'd give it I gave it an 8 out of 10. If you're not a Stephen King fan, I'd give it like a 7 out of 10. I got some serious Trek on this week with Deep Space Nine and the original series and Next Generation. And you have to understand that when I was growing up, I watched a lot of the original series and the follow-up to that, which was the animated series, which was, if you haven't seen the animated series for Star Trek, season 1 was 90% scripts for the original series they just didn't get a chance to make. And they had all but one of the cast members in the show, and they just used a lot of... So the first season of the animated series is really a good continuation of it. And then when I was in college, we watched a lot of it because it was on Canadian TV, and we used to get it late at night. And because we were gamers, we stayed up till 2 a.m. and watched a lot of Star Trek and Battlestar Galactica. And then after I graduated and I was working, or after I was home for the summer and I was working at Kentucky Fried Chicken, I would get out of work at like midnight or 1 o'clock, go home, be wide awake, and watch 1 or 2 episodes of the original series again. So I've seen all the episodes multiple times, and that was my Star Trek for a long time. And seeing it again, I really enjoyed it. I do like Deep Space Nine more, but the original series was kind of my thing.
I watched a decent amount of the original series. I was definitely more of a next gen. Like I was all next gen until DS9. Like I was a much bigger next gen fan than a TOS fan. Although I did have a couple of episodes on VHS just because I really liked the episodes. Oh God, why can't I remember the name of the?
Let me guess. A Piece of the Action.
Piece of the Action.
Ah.
I love it. It's so bad. It's great.
Yeah, a planet full of 30s Chicago gangsters. Yeah.
Yeah. So that makes a difference. So here's a question for you, because I don't really know. What were the years for that they were on for Next Gen, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager? Because I have no frame of reference anymore. I know that Next Gen came out when I was in college. That's all I really know about it. I
have this on my other computer.
Yeah.
But I will tell you that the way they line up, because I don't remember the exact years, but season 6 of Next Generation is season 1 of Deep Space Nine.
Yep.
Okay.
So season 2 of Deep Space Nine is season 7. That's why Ro crosses. That's why the Rolaren cross or the Maquis crossover occurs in season 2, and then season 3 of Deep Space Nine is the first season of Voyager.
How many seasons is Voyager?
7.
Okay.
So Deep Space Nine ends its run, and then for 3 more years, I think Voyager continues.
Okay, cool.
So, and Deep Space Nine had a 7-season run, and so did TNG. Yep. But yeah, there's overlap. Deep Space Nine is the connective tissue between, and in fact, there are TNG. You've seen the TNG Deep Space Nine crossovers. The first episode of Voyager crosses over onto Deep Space Nine. Quark is in the first episode of Voyager.
That's cool. All right.
Yep.
So there are a couple of things. I watched Birds of Prey, the Emancipation of Harley Quinn. I would give it a 6 out of 10. It was the second half was good, but it was DC series good. It was not like Marvel series good. The first half is very much in character for Harley Quinn, but it is all out of order and chaotic and irregular storytelling, and the story jumps around a lot. Margot Robbie is amazing as Harley Quinn, and it's all about like getting away from the abuse of the Joker, which is good. But the movie was missing something, and I'm not sure what, but it was fun to watch. I'm glad I watched it. But I would say I'd give it like a 5 or a 6 out of 10. And it was very chaotic in a way that I don't think it needed to be. They also introduced characters with names of like established DC characters that don't have anything to do with that character later on. The big one being Cassandra Cain. If you follow DC, Cassandra Cain was in the comic is the daughter of an assassin and is Batgirl for a while. And in this movie, she's a homeless pickpocket who spends the entire movie with her arm in a cast and does not much of anything except be a victim. And I kept waiting for, we're going to see this great reveal, and it doesn't happen. So there was no reason to call her Cassandra Cain. So anyway, the movie was up and down. And lastly, because I'm not playing Minecraft right now because we're at the end of our session, nothing really is going on, I went back to playing Fallout 4. Partially because I just wanted to do something where I got to accomplish something good. I love Fallout 4. I'm in my 3rd playthrough of it. I'm about mid-game. And when I play Fallout 4, I kind of ignore the main storyline until I've done everything else. And I haven't played Fallout 4 in about 6 months. And in that time, they have done a ton of new fan-created content. And almost all the new fan content includes some missions. And I logged in this time, and one of the missions is, theoretically, you're trying to find a cool gun. But the actual plot is you basically get this thing that's similar to a Siri, and you can go places and it will tell you about stuff, and it's got a mission for you. And the mission is that she died along the way, and her wife went on and died somewhere else. And so now she wants you to take her wedding ring and find her wife's grave so that you can put her wedding ring on her wife's grave so the two of them can finally be together forever. And
wow.
And as you go from place to place, you get to hear their conversations as they talk about their relationship as they go. And what happens is one of them gets sick and is dying, and then the choices they make and all that. It's a tearjerker. But man, it's a good story. And the end of it, when you find out that, you know, the wife finally died and you get there, you also find out what happened to her, and you can leave it there, or you can then turn around and go on rage-filled vengeance to avenge the two of them, which of course I did. So it was a beautiful story, and then ended with a ridiculous set piece fight, which was also fun. So I got my deep emotional love story that ends with a big gunfight, and that's what I wanted out of Fallout. But I like Fallout 4 because you can go through and you can build towns and reinforce them and all the new stuff they have. They have a hackers themed building now. You can go in and find a building that's designed based on the look of hackers. And so I've been on that mission so I can get all the neon tech and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, it's just fulfilling something in me in rescuing people, saving people, fulfilling romantic plot lines, and just shooting the hell out of fascist Nazi bad guys. So not that there's any reason to feel any for that.
No, it sounds like that sounds like always fun.
Yes. So Bob, how about you?
So once again, our Forbidden Lands game did not disappoint. So much fun. We had some dice issues again, a little bit.
I mean, I kind of like that. There's, you know, it's not always what you call it. It's just not safe out there. Like traveling is its own issue.
Yep. Exactly. We had a nice encounter with a wedding that we came upon in the wilderness. A human male was marrying an orc female, and some of the people on either side of the families did not approve of it and were about to cause some stuff. And my character clued into it and went, "Oh, well, no, you are not going to bust up this wedding with violence."
You know what's amazing is those are the encounters that are in the book.
Yeah.
Like the book has these like really great encounters. It's not just like, oh, you run into some monsters. Like there's some weird shit in those books, and it's just like I roll it and I'm like, okay, like we're doing this.
Yep.
Like,
but it makes it all the more interesting and fun. So times.
It's great.
Good
and our whole session was just like, we're leaving the keep. Yep. We're heading to the dungeon.
Yep.
We didn't even get to the dungeon.
Nope, we didn't get to the dungeon yet. Like 5 days of overland travel, 4 days of overland travel.
I lost sleep because of a harpy attack at night.
Yep.
It's good stuff.
Good times. As Jerry said, we did our session 0 for Band of Blades, which for anybody who does not know, Band of Blades is the forged in the dark version of gritty military combat stuff Company. Like the Black Company from Glenn Cook. And the one thing I didn't expect, because I was behind, I didn't flip through the book enough before the session 0. I just started flipping through the book right before we got started. The species that they have, basically it's all essentially humans, but you have different cultural references, like the mountain people and the forest people. And it was interesting the way they put that together, because like the forest people, absolutely no mechanical difference to these forest people, but they have an animalistic feature. Like some of them grow tails, some of them have pointy ears, some of them have cat-like eyes. Absolutely means nothing in the game. It's just flavor. But it was cool. And the way the game is structured is it is designed for, among other things, troop play, but also the quote-unquote traditional GMing tasks get distributed out. There's one person that's designated the GM for certain things, but then at other times of the game, that stuff kind of gets handled by another player. There are, in addition to the characters that you play with the playbooks, there are character roles that you take on, which are the higher level military that get to make decisions, like the marshal who decides who goes out on missions. And someone's going to be the marshal going, okay, well, on this mission, we're sending the spy and the sniper out. Mm-hmm. And those are the two that are going out with a couple of soldiers and rookies to back them up. That's their, that's the decision that gets made. And so you have, again, because it's Forged in the Dark, you have the mission play.
Sure, the job.
And then after the mission play, before the mission play, you have all of the setup stuff, the decisions that get made, and then the mission gets run. And then after that, there's also a secondary mission, which one of the other roles decides what missions they're going to go undergo. One mission is the live mission that the characters go on, and the secondary mission, there's just a roll to see what happened. Like, this mission failed, this mission succeeded. And then you incorporate that stuff into the overall flow of the game. But it's an interesting, another interesting variant of Blades in the Dark, and the grittiness. Like, some of these people aren't going to make it. Part of the reason why there's troop play, and then these low-level rookies and soldiers that eventually will get promoted to the actual roles of the other playbooks.
Yeah, that's cool.
So it's interesting, and we've got some very interesting characters out of the ones that we picked for our primary playbooks, that I think are going to be a lot of fun. So looking forward to playing some more of that. And then finally, I did a metric shit ton of walking this week. Just trying to get out and get some more fresh air and exercise, especially while it's been nice, because the weather's going to start turning, and when it gets yucky, I don't want to go outside and walk, so I'm doing it now and getting it out of the way. And it's been super nice for it. So looking forward to getting out tomorrow and doing it again.
Nice.
Phil, what's up?
Well, been watching the Star Treks, including, watching through Voyager, which is pretty good, right? I'm digging Voyager. It's hard for me now. I'm watching Voyager and Deep Space Nine, so it's really easy for me to see the difference between these two shows. And I'm just like, yep, I still love my Deep Space Nine. I read a bunch of Marvel comics in my Unlimited app this week, so I hadn't gotten in a little while, so I loaded up on a bunch of X titles, Captain America, a few other things. Kind of reading the Robot Rebellion stuff in the Iron Man 2020 line. I'm not sure I'm a big Arno Stark fan. I'm kind of hoping this fad will go away, as in Arno Stark will go away.
Wait, isn't he? He's the bad guy.
Oh, he's Iron Man right now.
Oh, he is. Okay.
Oh, it's a complicated story.
Yeah,
of course it is.
It's Marvel. It's complicated.
It's Marvel. It's complicated. Yeah. But Arno is currently Iron Man, and Tony Stark is on the run, leading the Robot Rebellion, which is a whole other story I don't even want to get into.
Okay.
Anyway, I it just reminds me I love my Marvel Unlimited. So it's just fun sometimes to read all those comics. I've been watching some more Cobra Kai. Started back in on season 2. This is my second watching of it. Man, love that show. So good. Season 2 is excellent. I can't wait. I've got 6 more episodes to go. So I think we're watching 3 this week, and then we'll watch the 3 next week. So that's good. Made a fantastic bagel casserole brunch the other day. Really good. I made a few modifications to the original recipe. I thought the original recipe was lacking a little, so I made some modifications. All modifications came out correctly. Delicious. So I was quite pleased with that. And I got a new gaming chair.
Yeah.
So I realized that my office chair wasn't very good. Like, I had a good office chair a while ago. Forgot that, like, a while ago, my daughter probably broke it when she was little. She kept sitting on one arm of it while I was working on it. And I think it just eventually tilted one way. And so I just, like, this week was like, all right, you know what? I'm just going to buy a new gaming chair. So I got, like, one of those, race car chair things. Not terribly expensive. I mean, I could have spent a lot more. But I got a modestly expensive one. And it came Monday. I put it together. And I likes it. I likes it a lot. I worked in it all day today, and I was very comfortable, and I really liked having a chair that actually goes to the back of my neck. I'm tall. I just assume most chairs aren't going to go to the back of my neck. So it's really nice. It's got the little pillow on the top. So like I can actually like sit and put my head back and not have to like sit forward the whole time. Really comfy. So that was fun. I think I said it earlier. I bought some cold weather gear, or starting to collect cold weather gear for riding. But because I'm a very big man, it's hard to get bicycling gear. So I'm just kind of piecing this together where I can. What else? Played Forbidden Lands. That's always good. We also played DCC.
Yeah.
This week in this weird ass adventure.
Oh yeah.
The Star Wound of Abaddon. Like, look, I haven't played a DCC adventure that wasn't weird, but Star Wound of Abaddon is a weird ass adventure.
Yeah.
Not that I don't like it. It's just super weird. But yeah, we played through a chunk of that as well. It wasn't actually that much. It was actually, I don't think, any combat. It was all exploration for the night.
Yeah.
Which was cool. I dug it. I hope you guys did.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's pretty much me. I'm just basically running games and staying on my bike, watching Star Trek. Like, this is pretty stock pandemic Phil.
Yeah.
I think that session of DCC really gave everybody in the group a chance to play their characters more. I saw a lot more role playing. I think the characters are probably getting personalities and all that because we didn't have a oh my god, we're trying to survive a fight scenario.
Yeah.
We really did a good job of giving everybody something to role play off of, and we're getting a better feel for who everybody is. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, you guys
they feel more like characters than just.
Oh, and they definitely were just cutouts for the longest time,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, they were. You guys are great players. It's easy if I give you space, you will occupy it. Like, I don't have to do any work to draw you guys out. If I create a space in the game for you guys to role play into, you will role play into it. So, actually, it's one of those things I like about pretty much every group I have right now is that's not a thing I have to do a lot of work. I don't have to do a lot of work to get people to role play. I just have to stop talking for a few minutes.
Oh, man. All right.
Good.
I believe that puts us at Patreon shout-outs.
Yay.
I agree.
Booyah! All right, this week we would like to thank Jim Fitzpatrick, Joseph Peralta, Kettle and Clock, Mike Gamer, My Brett, not My Brett specifically, but My Brett, Ninjabi, The Rainmaker, Richard Ruane, Rory McLeod, and Savannah Sizer.
Happy birthday, Savannah.
Yeah, happy birthday, Savannah.
Birthday to Savannah yesterday.
Yes.
And thank you all for listening tonight.
If you are free Tuesday evenings at 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. the Queen's time, come join us live on Twitch where you can chat with the other awesome listeners in the chat room for life and ask us the occasional question.
If you can't make it to the live show, check out our podcast each week, wherever you get your podcasts. Take a listen to some of the other shows in the Misdirected Mark Network, such as Down with D&D, Bone Store and Obsidian, the FM Gamers, Panda's Talking Games, the Gnome Cast, John Who Hustle, She's a Super Geek, and Bonus Experience. You can and should check out our sibling podcasts, Tabletop Bellhop, The Dice of the Night, and the always amazing Gaming and BS.
After you have made your mind up on what non-optimal choice you want to make, and before you get consent from all the players involved, leave us some feedback. You can reach us directly via the old-fashioned email system, mmp@misdirectedmark.com, or hit us up on Twitter. The show on the network is @misdirectedmark. He's Robert M. Everson?
Nope.
Damn it.
It's okay. Go ahead. Try it again.
He's Robert M. Everson. He's GM Gerrymander. And I am DNA Phil.
Hey, if you like what we do here and on the other shows in the Misdirected Mark Network, you can support our Patreon campaigns. MMP, Down with D&D, and Panda Stocking Games are at patreon.com/MMP. She's a Super Geek is at patreon.com/SassGeek. Zhang Hu Hustle is at patreon.com/Zhang Hu Hustle. And Bonus Experience is at patreon.com/what? bonus experience. I know, there's a pattern there. Patrons of MMP Down with D&D and Panda Stocking Games get access to the after show, the pre-production show notes, musical parodies, the Panda Stocking Games bonus outtakes, which are usually hilarious, and other special releases.
This has been a Misdirected Mark production, the media arm of Encoded Designs. Mic drop.
We out.